Thank you for joining me for the third part of this relatively Pikes Peak inspired painting I'm working on here. If you've seen parts 1 and 2 or the time lapse of part 2, you'll know I started completely differently, then went back to the photo and tried to get a little closer to what's actually there. I'm relatively happy with how the painting is, top to here. But the trees in the foreground don't really pop off the way I'd like them to. I'd really like to see more contrast there, and I've just pulled a couple colors to really just focus on those foreground trees. So I've got titanium white, midnight black, Van Dyke brown, sap green, alizarin crimson. I'm blanking on the color of the yellow, or the name of the yellow color, but that's on here too. Hopefully this is a pretty quick video to just take us through working on the front, and then I think I'm going to let this one be. So let's get started. Starting with just a liner brush in the kind of juicier part of the midnight black. And I'll maybe bring in a little of that Van Dyke brown in there too, just so that it's not completely black. And I'm rolling that brush around to try to get it a little more fine point. But I'm going to follow the various lines I've made before, if I can, kind of interpret where they might be. It has been a couple weeks since I did part 2, so the canvas is fairly dry. I like to steady my brush hand with my pinky, just because it gives me a little finer control. I know there are a lot of people who paint, and I'm fascinated how they can do this, but they hold the brush like this and just I find when I do that, I'm very, actually maybe for tree branches that would come off as a little more natural. But I feel like when I do that, I'm a little more of a control freak, so I'm never really satisfied with how the lines come out. They always feel a little too haphazard for me. But again, maybe for adding some variety in these branches, that might just be what the doctor ordered. So it's always good to try different things, even if you've tried them before. Maybe either you'll be in a better headspace for it, or maybe your skill level will have improved a little bit to where something that didn't make sense to you before now does. I can't say right now that I'm going to change all my painting technique to doing this, but again, like anything, maybe it's just a matter of practice, and there really isn't a secret other than, like most painting, just practice it and it should come to you. That doesn't mean you have to be Da Vinci or anything, but Just kind of looking for steady improvement rather than a masterpiece at every turn. Like here, now that I'm close to this edge, I'm going to switch back to my style. Let's see, maybe add a couple things down here for if there's another tree down at the bottom there. So for these bigger branches, I think I'm going to get a larger brush. Then I've got a little tin of thinner down here, and I like to keep that closed and not use it, because I am in a confined space, so I'm trying not to poison myself, but it does help make the paint flow a little better. The contrast, once I get more in here, should help push that background field and the mountains and everything further back. So the more I can separate this, the better the whole painting should come together. A thin paint will stick to a thick paint. But if all my branches are super thin and delicate, you know, there's a lot of liquid here. I still want to be able to get new leaves and everything to stick to this, so I don't want to make everything disappear. Another thing we do a lot is, I do a lot, is we don't let things cross over each other. You know, a tree is, it's this tree, it's that tree, it's that tree, it's this tree. And trying to get a few arms that just kind of cross over each other, because trees have a lot of depth to them. As Bob would say, go sit outside and make friends with a tree. I should probably spend some more time doing that myself. Even though it's cold out right now, I'm going to get colder as we head into winter. Actually, that's probably a better time to study trees from a structure standpoint. I have a big tree that sits in front of our house and can look out the front window and just spend some time seeing how the branches interact with each other, kind of how the structure all comes together, how one side of it balances the other so it doesn't fall over. And so already I'm a little happier with that. I'm going to take a bigger brush now and go into that dark get some more of the going into the brown and black, and just get some of these bigger trunk sections. Again, I don't need to cover every ounce of this, but just get it a little more well defined, especially toward the bases. This guy coming up here, I kind of butchered that. I might have to come back and fix him. Should play around with doing some trees with a palette knife. My grandma took a class, I think, once, and started making all our trees with, I think, a knife, and she had amazing texture. As a kid, all I wanted to do was kind of run my fingers back and forth across the bark, and it just made it seem so realistic. I don't think it's right for this piece, but I'm kind of doing some of these trunks that way in the future. Might be a good exercise for the right project. I think I'm going to just bring this whole trunk together. Make it feel like it has a little more structure to it. Kind of just give it a little more definition for contrast. Going to come back with the little brush. Just add in a couple more traces of things. I'm not happy with what's going on down there, but I think I'm going to just let that go and then see if I can come back with a bigger brush. So right now I'm happier with how dark that stuff is, and going to, I think now I'm going to go into more of that dark with this, not a very big brush. Let's get crazy. Let's use this guy, our 2-inch brush. This is an older one that doesn't quite go into a point as well, so I like to use it for my edging kind of things. But I'm going to go into the black and brown and just lay a base for some of these leaves to set. I'm going to do this kind of light, as in light coverage of it, because we're going to come back over with our colors, but I want these to stand out well from the let's go this way. I'm trying to do different rotations of the brush and things to see how big of a mess I can make. I think in the last video I talked about how my grandma used a sponge for a lot of her leaves, and that worked really well. Oh, that's just a big mess. There, I'll have to come back and get some of that off of it. There. I don't want to turn that into mud. I want to leave some of that light color coming through, but especially up here, we got to get that dark to contrast with what's behind it. We'll see, I might be completely ruining this, but that is part of the adventure. Oh, that kind of got out of control. Happy little accident there. We ate up a lot of our and just going to add more background foliage. I did spend some time looking at some different paintings, some of Bob's, some of my grandma's, just kind of looking at, you know, kind of what was missing from these, and I kind of knew, I think at the end of the last video, that these needed more contrast, but I'm trying to think of a way to actually go about that. So hopefully some of that study paid off. Speaking of study, I just had an idea of maybe going to a couple museums and stuff around town and just kind of seeing some different styles, and it's always good to look at people who do things differently than you and see if it's something you want to incorporate. Got kind of a gross, overly dark patch there, but and kind of, yeah, it's getting sloppy looking, so just trying to tap out some of this texture I left in here, because I don't want that to be the thing that draws your eye instead of the actual trees themselves. So okay, I'm going to go into a little of the dark and the titanium white with the Van Dyke brown. Gonna mix that up right on the brush so it's kind of marbly, and Just kind of re-drag that through some places where not going to do any more than that because we are going to get too bogged down in the dark colors. So one of the things I think I'm going to do now is go into these and add some red. It was fall when we were there, and I actually got a little afraid last time. I may have even tried it, but I was afraid it was going to get too much and be too intense, but I think we need to see some of that color of the leaves changing from green to red to yellow, and some of that difference. So I'm not going to do it everywhere. I don't want these to be crimson trees, but I'm going to just go in with a 1-inch brush and add some. That's blending with the dark really nicely. So if I did try this last time, I probably didn't have dark enough color behind it, but it's going to add just another kind of dimension to the. Maybe I'll keep those more, for the most part, on the shadow side of things. So kind of work at it. If our light's coming from here, then I want to bring some of this red up from this way. Just kind of reinforce the difference. Ooh, that was a big. Got more on there than I expected. That's an aggressive crimson down there. But I wanted to add some. I added a lot. I'm going to try to add a little yellow in here and see what this does. This might make it kind of gross orange, so I'm a little concerned about it, but it's not too bad. Actually, I'm pretty happy with that, but I think I'm going to need to add some thinner to this to make it really work. Kind of doing some mud mixing here. I'm not super happy with how this is going. Getting kind of blotchy here, and I don't like that. I wish this had a little more structure to it. So I might actually go into some of the green now. Just gonna try to blend a little of that in too, because these trees are very dark. Well, if you came here to see a happy accident, I think you've seen it. I do think there's probably a need to subtly add some of this color, very subtly if I can, back into these little hillsides. Okay, that's too bold. Well, I think I gotta stop here, come back with a lighter approach. So maybe the thing to do is now come in with maybe some sap green and cad yellow and some liquid white and get it pretty bright and just kind of come over the top of this and try to solve this little riddle I've created. This just goes to show 3 parts in a row that stuff doesn't always pan out how you expect. Even if you have experience, doesn't mean when you step up to a new canvas that you're going to have incredible success, and that's okay. You know, on something like this, you either have to go with the learning experience route or just cut your losses and say, all right, either clean off the canvas or time to just throw it out, which I hate to do from a wasting standpoint, but realistically sometimes you just need to start fresh. So mix this up with a palette knife. So got a little bit of green, yellow, just get maybe a touch of the red. Bright, oh, it's almost flesh colored, that's not great. Yeah, it's a pretty hideous color. So I think we need more yellow in there. I'm kind of getting into a almost limey yellow. Adding green and red together was a mistake. I have a feeling this is going to mix in with some of the background color and be okay. Or it won't. And that'll be hilarious to watch. Let's get a different 1-inch brush. Cooking. And we're going to go. Ooh, that needs some love. Let's see what we can get out of him. Nope. That's not right either. So, good thing we're using a different brush. We can kind of go back over the top and dull that down with the older one. So, Let's try it with this brush. Maybe the two of them together will be okay. Yeah, it's almost the exact same color as the background, so as I come up to this yellow stuff, you're not even seeing that I'm adding this. The struggle is real. Sometimes you just have to keep pushing on something, even if it might not be perfect, just because it might be better to move forward than to. Because actually, now that more of this is on there, I'm not happy with this tree, but I'm more okay with this color being on it. It does kind of bring it back into the background a little bit. One of the problems I was noticing with these good dark colors, and I really like the reds and oranges, and I'd probably do something more with that in the future. But it's so vastly different than what's in the background that it's a little too jarring. I think had I planned more fall colors in my background, it would be tying together a little nicer. Okay, take a step back. It's not horrific, but it's not good. Maybe if I try to add a little green back into the back side of this. See if this will work. So I just added more sap green into my lighter yellow color. I'm just going to try to touch on some of the. I know this is killing some of my contrast, but right now it's just too different than the background. Well, I think my penance for this one is I'm gonna need to sit and look at some trees. I know I've got way too many layers cooking here, and it just makes these trees look way too dense. I've kind of killed the detail out of my trunks and stuff, so maybe if I kind of go back in and gently redefine some of that stuff. That's a little better. Now maybe where is my palette knife? It's still in my hand. And maybe I will. And Bob always does these little twigs and scratches and things in the underbrush, but maybe it'll kind of work in the trees too, just to give it a little. It did darken up the front, so I think that's kind of an improvement. But we lost a lot of definition and things through here. So to wrap up, I think this is going to be the last part of this painting. I got it to a point where I think I'm equally unhappy with the top, the middle, and the bottom. For an exercise, for getting back into it, this has been very good, very informative. It reminded me of some of the things I still need to work on refreshing my skills with, and ultimately just means I need to do more practicing. Overall, it was a great experience, and like Bob says, every day's a good day when you paint, and although the results aren't necessarily what you're looking for, it's very therapeutic and very enjoyable to actually put some color on a canvas and try to make something yourself. So all in all, I'm very happy with the process, the learnings from it, and I think it's time to say goodbye to this one and start something fresh next time. But I hope you've enjoyed this, even if it's just at my expense, which is very valid. But I appreciate you watching, and thank you for your time. Have a great day. I'll see you next time.